All right, guys, stand by. Stand coming back in 10. All right, Sam coming back in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. And the MGoBlog Roundtable is back, folks. Back by popular demand. I know folks were wondering if we were going to be able to do it, right? I haven't been in the studio, in an official capacity. And as a matter of fact, no, I haven't been in the studio at all in over 7 months. I went in my office last night to grab some equipment for the first time in like 3 months. So how in the hell are we going to do a roundtable segment? Well, this is one of the byproducts of what is obviously a very trying circumstance, us all being in a work from home capacity, or at least many of us be from work from home capacity. How do you do that? Zoom has been a revelation for a lot of people. This is our format, StreamYard. And now we can loop in the MGoBlog Roundtable crew. And so joining us, this is a segment that Craig Ross alone kept alive, folks. Craig Ross is responsible for carrying us from the early days of the pandemic to now, where we can bring the roundtable back. So, of course, Craig is back with us. Craig, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. This is, I don't know how much of the weight I carried. I actually think you and Ira were carrying it more than I was. But I've got tired of talking about my car, but not so much that. I think people, when I started, before I knew we were doing the roundtable today, I thought I'm going to tell the story about why I went to law school, which actually relates to a car and the beater I was driving at that particular moment. And so I thought, no, it's too much. I've gone too far. So I'm really happy to have Seth and you may recall, Sam, a number of years ago, we were doing it out at Suburban, and Brian didn't show up. And midway through the show, he crawled through the door. And so I have a hunch, he was literally on his hands and knees as he came through the door of Suburban midway through the show. And so I think, sometimes there's just something wrong about Brian. And I think that's maybe going on today. What do you think, Seth? I'm happy to see you, man. I'm happy to be on with another.
Well, I was telling Sam earlier, I feel kind of like the the kid who goes to see his favorite band, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you play drums? Why don't you come on up here?" Mm-hmm. So it's probably fun to be on here. I did have some other options, actually. Michigan State was talking to me a lot about my brand and how I could build that. So they
listening on the radio from MGoBlog, who is now a member of the Roundtable crew. So great to have you, Seth. And the reference to branding, for those of you who missed some of the recruiting, Michigan State is really. It's not like Rayshawn Benny is the only prospect they're pushing that with. They have really been pushing this name, image, likeness thing like it's already in effect. And it's worked for them with some guys. It certainly is gaining them some traction with Rayshawn. But I thought of the guy, this is like the most ridiculous thing, at least to me. I didn't say this kid, but comparing Michigan State and Michigan branding wise is like Michael Jordan versus Spud. It's like it's not a contest. I said this on our podcast, guys. Hey, look, if you're Michigan and you've been reluctant to address this topic, and I'm not going to belabor this point because I want to get you guys' thoughts on some college football, but if you don't want to address this because of the nebulous nature of it, I mean, you don't know when this rule is going to go into effect. When it does go into effect, you don't know the kinds of sponsorships that are going to be allowed, how many of them are going to be allowed, how much you're going to be able to get. You don't know any of those things. And so I understand the reluctance to touch on it, but to address it on a very sort of 1,000-foot level, I'd be like, look, if this does come into effect, think about the branding power of Michigan compared to Michigan State. Just look at what Nike said. Nike said, Michigan State will give you 10 years $34 million. This is your apparel deal. Michigan will give you 11 years, $174 million. Guys, if that doesn't tell you the difference between these two schools in branding power, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've pretty much nailed it. Beyond that, I mean, look at the sort of cachet of Michigan State, people who've gone through, say, Michigan State football versus those who've gone through Michigan football. I mean, with Michigan football, you've got Tom Brady. That's a pretty big deal. Charles Woodson, pretty big deal, and many others. At Michigan State, I mean, you got guys that shoot themselves in the leg and things like that. So, I mean, I'm not sure that's a direction I would like to. I mean, but I mean, I give them credit for trying to do what they can do to build their program. But from any sort of objective point of view, it feels like a flat Earth theory.
Right.
But my view on.
Seth, you got me wound up, man.
If I'm filling in for Ed here, then I feel like I have to kind of bring some of the Ed power and throw some things out there to kind of heat things up.
Yeah, so I am curious, guys, because I want to broad brush it and focus mostly on Michigan this week, and we'll start talking opponents next week. But obviously, everyone, when you talk about what's the biggest question on the team, what do you want to see most? You start with the quarterback. And I'm curious what aspects, let's assume for the sake of argument that Joe Milton, he hits the ground running. What aspects of this offense do you think he's going to be able to accentuate, to capitalize on? What will we see with him at the helm that maybe we weren't able to see last year?
Craig, go ahead. But
I mean, this is obviously a great question and one that I don't know the answer to, and I doubt if anyone except those right inside of the program have an answer to. I mean, let me go back to last year for a moment. Last year in the spring, I was very excited about the offense. In the spring practice game, I thought, man, this offense is going to be a different deal. Speed and space, yes, yes, yes. And then we come out and it looks something completely different. I forgot who we played in the first game, but it wasn't good. Second game, I think we play Army, and my wife had to stop me from committing suicide because here we have a offensive line. I don't know if you guys have been watching Michael Nwenu kill it in the NFL. I mean, I watched him pancake guys about 8 times last time I watched one of his games. And you got Cesar Ruiz as a success. You got an NFL right tackle in Mayfield. You got Bradison and Runyon on NFL rosters. And we can't move the ball against Army, a team that got hammered on defense by everyone on their roster, including teams like Tulane. Mm-hmm. And so it was a confusing moment for me, to say the least, that Army game we could have lost. I mean, we were unlucky. We got a ridiculous call in it, but it was still a game we could have lost in a fairly ballparkish even game. So it's hard to make predictions or say what's going to happen with a new quarterback this year, when we got an incredibly limited sample size of his work, and B, we haven't seen anything. We're working off is vague rumor, best case scenario. So what this offense is going to look like, or what Joe Milton, who I assume is a starter, is going to bring, I don't have an idea. Do you know, Sam?
Well, what do you think first, Seth?
So last year, one of the big problems that Michigan offense had, especially in the Army and MTSU games, was that they were relying on Shea to make a lot of reads. This is zone read. This is not even throwing the ball, right? This is just making the right read, whether you can run or not. We have not seen enough of Joe Milton. I think there was one opportunity against Rutgers where he kept the ball and ran when he was supposed to. So he's one of one out of his entire career. That is going to make a lot of things that Gaddis wanted to put in the offense, I think. Because last year they came out with all these reads, and then later in the season, and I think it was a correct decision, he learned to trust those offensive linemen. He just, ran a whole lot of pin and pull and trust, run behind Michael Onwenu. You got Mike Onwenu, might as well run behind that guy. And you got Ben Mason, might as well break a hole with that guy. You don't have to create everything on the whiteboard. And I think that if they can get the quarterback to make the right reads, and this is one of the reasons we were excited about McCaffrey, because we thought he was good at this, that changes a lot of what Gaddis can do as far as what Gaddis wants to do. As far as like what Joe Milton brings, who knows, right? I mean, brand new quarterback, and the way this whole thing went down, like if we had a better explanation of why McCaffrey left, maybe it would make, we could use that to triangulate, but we don't. So, my best hope is that, he looks so good that McCaffrey was like, well, I'm carrying a clipboard all year. Why am I going to risk COVID for that? Decide to finish up his degree and move on. That's the best case scenario. The arm strength does open up things downfield, and Michigan's got some speed, right? Mm. So you have a guy like Roman Wilson. It doesn't take a lot. You guys remember that guy, Devin Smith for Ohio State. He was just send him straight downfield, right? His routes weren't interesting. He would just run straight downfield, but he was so fast that they made that work, and he averaged like 25 yards a catch. So you can do that with Roman Wilson. That opens up a lot of things, and you don't really have to teach the freshman very much to do that.
Yeah, well, a few things that have been very evident about Josh Gaddis: speed, and more speed. I think when he goes to recruit receivers, all right, let me see their track times. I mean, football film is just one piece of the puzzle, but without the track speed element, you are missing a huge part of the qualification for a Josh Gaddis receiver, and it's why it stuck out to me when a couple of weeks ago in the press conference he stepped out and he said, "Look, I'm looking at the talent and the technique in this room, and I feel like it's up there with some of the best that I've been around." And think about it, guys. I mean, he's been in you go back to, from Vanderbilt to Penn State with guys like Deshaun Hamilton and KJ Hamler to obviously at Bama. You see Henry Ruggs running by everybody. You still got Devontae Smith down there at Bama. For him to say that, and especially compared to last year's Michigan receiver room, which, high on, 4 and 5 star guys, for him to say that tells you the premium that he places on speed, because this is without question a faster receiver room. Now, I don't think that they have a one guy who's going to be what Nico Collins would have been, but collectively, can they be more vertical? Will they press it down the field more? Kind of like, I kind of look at it like Ohio State going from Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields. I mean, same offense, but different emphasis, right? And man, not as many mesh routes, a lot more vertical. And we saw it in the Michigan game. I think we're going to see that, not to the complete and total disregard for short and intermediate. That's going to obviously, that's a staple of this offense too. And that's where I kind of want to jump off, guys, in talking about Joe a little bit, because I was heartened to hear in listening to all of the analysis of Joe for the last couple of months. And you guys, I know you remember, Craig, after the bowl game, I was talking up, hey, this is Dylan's job to lose. And he's, but Joe's going to be there and push him. And it wasn't a day after I said that I got a call. You're wrong. You want to sound, if you want to sound like you're informed, if you're going to be the Michigan insider, then you should have this right. And this is a real battle. This is not Dylan McCaffrey and maybe Joe can challenge him. This is we're going to see. And they got in fall camp. And guys, I'm just telling you, I reported this throughout, over the course of the 2 months from mid-July through August and all the way up until now. It was not close. It was not close. Joe was far and away ahead in the race from everyone I talked to. There was a total and complete consensus on it, and from his feel to his command And the part that hurt me the most was the talk about touch, because one guy said, "Hey man, everything's not a heater." He has an off-speed pitch now. Now, here's what I don't know. To your point, Seth, how quickly will that translate to games? I don't know how quickly that'll translate to games. I mean, we've seen plenty of guys star on State Street, and it takes a little bit of time for them to acclimate, especially quarterbacks over on Stadium in Maine.
Well, anyone who watched Michigan football in the 90s and 2000s knows what arm strength means, because we had some howitzers play here. And, when you play a zone team, Michigan's had a lot of trouble throwing the ball against zone teams. Think back to Iowa. Think about all the games against Michigan State. When teams zone you, Michigan's had a hard time not just identifying, but getting the ball there. We all remember Russell Bellamy's first throw, and you got an open guy, and then the ball's going there, and then the ball's still going there, and then the ball's still going there, and they catch up. So when you want to throw against zone, it's all about how fast can you get the ball to the guy who's sitting in there going, hey, I'm open. So that arm strength, everyone, I grew up watching, the 90s guys, and they could go on a stop route, and that was open almost every single time. And then, you'll watch some more football and you realize most teams can cover that. Well, why was that open? Because John Navarre had a howitzer, and, it wasn't the greatest quarterback in ever, and especially in 2001, he didn't really know the offense very well yet. But he could get the ball there so fast that Jason Levine could just stop. The ball comes to him, and then you go. So that is going to open up, and that's the kind of offense that passing offense you can do with him, not just the downfield stuff, because downfield accuracy is not easy. I don't know how different he's going to be from Shea, because Shea was so up and down. I went over his Ohio State and his Alabama games over the offseason, and his Ohio State game was fine. You can beat Ohio State with the game that Shea Patterson had. And then his Alabama game was, 2017 John O'Corn Ohio State level. It was really, really bad. So if, Milton, if Milton is, more consistent, and I don't know how much you can ask a new quarterback to be that, but that consistency might help in games against teams that we had a couple games where the quarterback would just fall apart.
Yeah, I guess I've been around long enough, Craig, to temper things a bit. I'm heartened by what everyone is saying, but there has to be some room for him to make some mistakes and grow through them. And I'm talking about Joe. And I would feel a lot better if he had a proven, if he had a Braylon Edwards like Chad did, or or absent of Braylon Edwards, he had 3 or 4 starters coming back on the offensive line. But here you're breaking in a largely new offensive line, granted with guys that have played football at Michigan, make no mistake, and a receiving core long on talent, but none of those guys has been a frontline guy. And the most dynamic of the group, they're all your young guys. So again, how quickly will that unit of newness and inexperience, how quickly will they mesh and hit on all cylinders like they seem to be doing at times, a lot of the time in practice? I just, I've been around long enough to know that everything that happens on the practice field, even if it's happening consistently, doesn't always happen right away once you get games.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you guys have said in your comments here are provocative. I mean, one thing that you just said is more than subtle, Sam, about not having A+ quality receiver, or at least one that's a known quantity. You could make a lot of money, or you would have made a lot of money this year in the NFL by fading NFL teams with their top receiver out. Because no matter who the quarterback was, teams with their top receiver out just went in the tank, have gone in the tank so far this year in the NFL. And so that's something that I think I underappreciated, and I think so. Your point is good. Now we don't know because at wide receiver, we think Mike Sanderson will be good. I think so. I think Giles Jackson is the real deal. We know Roman Wilson can fly. We all have a hunch that Cornelius Johnson is going to be a really good receiver, but you don't have a Nico Collins out there, and you'd feel better if you had a Nico Collins. That's for sure. And so that's a point. The fact that we don't really know what this offensive line is going to look like at all, in fact, is another point, and that bears on quarterback play. I still come back to something we talked about earlier in the summer, though, Sam, and that's it's confusing to me, and I think to most everyone, as to why McCaffrey left, because there was no seeming upside to him leaving the program. It's hard to figure out what he gains by that. And the only thing I can, and this is completely speculative by me, the only thing I can come up with is he was passed by Cade McNamara too. And I know you're skeptical of this one, but I went back and looked. I'm not much of a recruiting guy. I don't trust the analyses by and large. You go and look at a Hassan Haskins and say that guy looks as good or better than a lot of the other backs that are rated a lot higher than him. But I looked at McNamara, and while he wasn't a super high recruit, he did seem to have offers from LSU, Alabama. I heard rumors that he was top on Alabama's board, the top guy. So I don't know. You're chomping at the bit there about this.
So it's not that I disagree with the notion, because I had heard that Cade McNamara many days, and folks over on the MichiganInsider.com were like, hell no, this is just a bunch of blusters, and this is not happening. That Cade McNamara was number 2 on many days, that he outperformed Dylan on many days, and Dylan missed some time being banged up a little bit too. So there was an increased opportunity for Cade McNamara as well to make more of an impression. What I guess I am a bit skeptical of is, even if Cade McNamara, outperforms Dylan McCaffrey for a good portion of fall camp, I still think Dylan McCaffrey is not only your backup. He gets some snaps. He gets some meaningful snaps in games with Joe Milton as the number 1 quarterback. That's what's curious to me. I just don't see a scenario where Jim Harbaugh does not play Dylan McCaffrey some if Dylan McCaffrey's around. I just don't see it. Now, that start, no, but play, absolutely. And my sense is, and I'm just guessing, just speculating, that prospect wasn't enough for him. That's my speculation on the matter. But more curious to me, and I want to know what you think, Seth. More curious to me is Nico Collins. Man, I can understand on some level how the optics of transferring and it not being, hey, he lost the job. Like you can't say definitively right now. I mean, we can based on what we're hearing, but you can't report. The ESPN can't say Dylan McCaffrey lost the job, right?
Right.
The optics of that, I could see that working for him. I don't understand the Nico decision quite as much, because the dynamics haven't really changed. The season ends at the same time. The offensive picture is no different than it was when he decided to come back for his senior year. Everyone on the team could see that Joe was out front. So the chance to put some more film out there and maybe boost his draft stock would seemingly be there as much now as it was at the beginning of the season, and yet he's opted to, at least to this point, to stay away. He can still, there's still an opportunity for him to come back. He was in classes, virtually, so could still come back.
He is in classes. I didn't know that he is. I didn't know that he's actually in classes right now.
He had. Oh, see, now I don't know if he stayed in them. I don't know if he stayed in them, but he didn't have the hurdle that Jalen Mayfield did. See, Jalen Mayfield hadn't registered for classes.
Right.
So there was a very tight window to get him back into the fold. When he decided to come back, he had to decide that weekend. If he didn't decide that weekend, he wasn't going to be able to add classes and get in. Nico's a different story. Nico had registered for classes, was in them. So conceivably, if he kept up his course load, he could come back tomorrow if he wanted to. I just don't know what that thing is that has sort of kept him away, and I'm curious if you have any speculation.
I mean, my best guess here is that he's not listening to advice from guys like you and me right now. That he's getting that, you know, sometimes you get somebody in your ear who tells you, here's what you should do. They might not have necessarily your best interests at heart, or they may have, you know, I don't know how much of a fine point I can put on it, but, you know, agents get involved, and those guys, even if you're going to drop down the draft because there's not enough film on you, having you in the fold and making sure you're not injured and just having you working out, that's safe for them. That is a, you know, bank it. Now you got that. Now you have that asset, which you could lose during the season. So I think if, like, you know, from the perspective of Nico's agent, if I was his agent, I would want him not playing this year.
Really?
Yeah, because like if you're a big time agent, you just want the bank. You're not looking for, like, you know, the difference between where he might go versus where he, you know, would go right now is probably not as much as the danger of him getting COVID or having him you know, hurt something and have an injury the rest of his career. I think that, you know, they wants to bank it. That's my best guess. My best guess is that whoever is representing him is looking out for their interests, and I think that that's probably a powerful statement coming from someone. If you're, you know, new to this process and you have a big time guy like Drew Rosenhaus or something telling you, here's what you should do. I mean, it's hard not to listen to that guy.
Yeah, I guess the angle I would see from an agent standpoint, not wanting him to play, is the notion that you are rescinding an agreement that puts that guy back on the market.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Jalen Mayfield's agent was totally different. I mean, it was totally different than that description of things. Like they encouraged him, like, you going back helping your draft stock helps us all, and
right,
we're convinced that we will come back together if, you know, once you get through your college career. So in the case of, and I know we got to get to a break because I see Ira just pop in there. You know, in the case of Nico, and I've seen this pop up a couple of times in the comments. Dre 408 says Nico is still on Michigan's roster and Ambry Thomas was removed. And that doesn't really tell me anything that I didn't know already. Ambry Thomas was not in classes. Ambry Thomas has graduated, and Ambry Thomas has 2 degrees. Ambry Thomas is he and his family have been emphatic that he's not coming back. There is, even with him saying no, even with Nico saying no, you know, up to this point, there is the opportunity, because he was in classes, for him to come back. Now, will he do that? I don't know. I mean, I know from a coaching perspective, they have moved on and proceeded like these are the guys we're going to have. On the player side, there have been some guys that have held out hope and like, hey, we're going thinking that maybe like get him to come back. You know,
and from a fan side, we can hold out hope, but him be silent on it tells me that he's not coming back. And I agree. Like, from the coach's perspective, you have 1 more week to prepare your team for the season, and then you got a week to prepare for Minnesota, and that's it. That's all you got left. So, I mean, you're getting close to the point now where you're putting in your game plan for Minnesota, and you got to know who's on your team and what you're going to be doing. If Nico all of a sudden today says, you know what, I am coming back, you know, there's enough time. If he comes back next week, they've already put the Minnesota game plan together, and, you know, sure, you can work him in, but, like, I don't know. I mean, best case scenario, he's skipping fall camp, right? This is like,
right, yeah.
Which not be the first football player to do that. I've never seen it done in college before.
Right? Yeah, hold out. Exactly. All right, listen, we got it. Ira is gonna shut off the whole thing if we don't take a break right now. So let's get to a break. We'll come back on the other side. We'll pick up this Michigan football discussion here on the MGoBlog Roundtable on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket.
You guys have any thoughts about
clear? And just so you know, we are on everyone can still watch and see you while we're on break. Just an FYI.
Okay. So I'll try and keep it cleaner than ordinary.
Right.
I mean, what about
Sam? You had no echo in your headphones when you were doing that, real quick.
No echo.
Perfect. Great.
Yeah, I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Craig.
You can't hear me. What about Mississippi putting up 48 points? Rich Rod against Alabama. Is this the day when if we started to go into the days of no defense at all in football?
The whole plays Big 12 defense. That's my conclusion. The Big 12 is rubbing off on everyone. They don't.
I mean,
well, Steve still talks to Partridge, I think, and I think the story is like they've been having to like keep guys separate who play together for most of the they can't do all their extra practices, and like they're keeping groups separate so that like you don't lose your entire starting 11 on defense if one COVID outbreak comes, right? So because of that, these guys get on the field and they've had practices together, but they haven't had as many practices as they have, and they can't go out and do drills together. And defenses even more than offenses have to like be based off of what the next guy's doing, right? You have to like sense where that guy's going. So like I think defenses are just a mess this year because they can't practice the way they're used to practicing.
Yeah, I can go with that. I mean, more so from the Alabama perspective than Ole Miss. I'm not surprised that Ole Miss is getting bombed.
Well, yeah, that is
Alabama getting bombed. That Ole Miss gave up 59 points to Alabama last year.
Right. So they'll
that's not new, but Alabama giving up that many points is new.
Yeah, at some point you're on the curve that's just barely moving to the line, and what is that called? Asymptomatic or something? And so going from 59 to 64 or 63, whatever it was, isn't much, but 48 points, Mississippi scoring against that. And your point is probably right. From
30 seconds, guys, back in 30.
Saban's point of view was that they stole his signals. And did you see that? No, I'm serious. I got a quote here from Saban. Saban,
once a Spartan, always a Spartan.
Yeah, Saban said that it quote seemed that there was quote something fishy, that Kiffin had quote stolen our signals, and that I was thinking, well, maybe Bama's signals were right out of the Marx Brothers. Hey diddle diddle, this time we blitz up the middle or something like that.
All right, guys, stand by. We're coming back here. Stand by.
Put them in.
All right.
Stand by.
Like, oh shoot, we're supposed to do that, weren't we? I got to tell you, I am surprised that Saban of all people.
Okay, guys, coming back. Stand by.
I think we said at the beginning of the season that if anyone's organized enough,
coming back in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. Ira has the power of the mute. You need to moderate some debates, Ira. He has the power of the mute button. We are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTKA.com. MGoBlog Roundtable and broadcasting live also via StreamYard, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on WTKA.com, and getting some comments and feedback from the people. This is going to be our routine with the MGoBlog Roundtable. We're, of course, we're going to have Brian, and Brian is going to be a part of the roundtable in the future. Something came up today, don't know what, but he will be a part of the roundtable moving forward, and you will see us in this format. You'll also see us in this format on the Countdown to Kickoff show and on many other segments here on the Michigan Insider. But when we left off, guys, we spent a lot of time talking quarterback, talking offense. Let's switch to the other side of the ball. And I'm curious, and we'll start with you, Craig, your expectations for this defense, understanding that there is a lot of buzz about this defensive front.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like our defensive end should be good. there's no reason to believe that Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson won't be just about as good as anybody else in the country has. I can't imagine that there are too many teams that are more blessed with defensive ends than Michigan. But the tackle positions are problematic. The coaches have talked it up completely, that Christopher Hinton and Carlo Kemp, and they've even talking Julius Welchoff. Yeah, and so they've talked, the coaching staff for sure. And I think I heard Sean Nua this morning on your show talking up the interior defensive line, and that's surely one of the spots, in the defense you have to question, but you can't question the inside linebackers. You wouldn't think that you would have a problem at the Will or the Mike. I mean, those are two experienced guys who've played well. Viper is can be a question, and of course, corner's a question. Now, I thought Vincent Gray, he had some criticism last year, but I thought he played reasonably well as a corner last year. And but the other corner it remains a who knows. And I think I heard somebody this morning say that there's two ways to build a defense. And one way is the Cleveland Browns in the distant past, when they would have just two lockdown, incredible corners, allowing them to do all kinds of stuff with the rest of their team. And the other way is to just not ever give the quarterback any opportunity, and to take the pressure off your corners and your defensive backs. We have neither one of those as a sort of proven reality for this defense. So when you see Alabama, as we were talking in the break, give up 48 points, you wonder if everybody perhaps is just not going to be trying to outscore everybody else and just gambling on defense. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Seth?
I mean, the first game is going to tell us. I know we're going to get into the preview of the other teams, but like Minnesota likes to run those RPOs, and they're going to challenge your linebackers to stay back at a mesh point and not help the defensive line while they're trying to run inside, and they'll run inside every single play until you can go up and stop that. So how do you beat that? Well, Wisconsin can show you. They have a bunch of big, heavy defensive linemen who will suck up blocks and make sure that goes nowhere. And that's how Michigan would do it all the way through Maurice Hurst. We haven't had the defensive tackles to do it since. And, we have this year's Donovan Jeter hype, which I don't know why it's any different than last year's Donovan Jeter hype. But maybe that works. I think Chris Hinton is the big X factor, because defensive tackles are never good their freshman year. Like at best you get, just a guy you can insert and he can cause some pressure a little bit, but he's not going to have everything down. There's too much that goes on. Think how smart offensive linemen are. Think how much they practice together to do different things to people, and how many different angles things can come at you. Defensive line, it takes more than a year on campus to get it to a defensive tackle at least. So I think Hinton breaking out is a big deal, and I think that allows them to move Kemp back to the 3-tech, where he's not, taking on double teams and getting shoved out of the pocket. And Michigan was fine against everybody, but Alabama and to a lesser degree Penn State, and to a greater degree maybe Wisconsin, right?
Ohio State.
And Ohio State. Well, Ohio State's Ohio State. They're gonna do that. But yeah, like if when not facing elite offensive lines, they held up. I think they actually held up really well against Army. They probably did better than anybody against Army last year. But that was a small defensive line. If they can get a couple more guys, the one thing that's bothered me all offseason is I have not heard anything about Mozzie Smith, and he's kind of supposed to be stepping up this year too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, your point about Donovan Jeter hype is not being new is kind of why there is a wait and see aspect to it. Now, I've heard enough of a difference, about a difference in approach, a difference in body. You got, obviously he's healthy. He was not healthy at the beginning of the last year. He missed his first year. He had his injury issues, but the response to adversity, and I talked about this over on the MichiganInsider.com. I mean, he's impressed with his with his mindset. And Sean Nua has kind of talked about how there's just seemingly a different approach that has led to him being much more consistent in practice. Now, is that going to translate to games? That's the I don't know portion of this. I know the work that Chris Hinton put in the summer. I talked to his trainer, Marcus Howard, at length, and know all the things that he worked on, working with a former pro on his technique, looking really good in practice. I don't know if it's going to translate. And so therein lies this huge question mark. But what I can tell you is, without equivocation, they think they are going to be a better pressure team. And I think they need to be this year. You want to get great pressure every year. But Craig, the point that you raised, I think is a key one. And that is, for as confident as they are, and I think a lot of fans are, as I am, and you come back and you expect Vince to make take a step up this year. Vincent Gray to take a step up this year. But you don't have, for the first time in the Harbaugh era, that proven corner, that guy who has that proven starter. I've been challenged. I've been through a season, been through the rigors and the wars, credibility on the field. That doesn't mean that they're short on talent. It just means they're short on experience. And man, you're starting out the season against the reigning Big Ten receiver of the year. And man, they better get pressure just to make sure that they give that group, that unit, some time to grow on the job. Safety is going to be outstanding. But that corner spot, I just feel like we're gonna have to give them some time to grow.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Greg.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with that, completely. If you had Ambry back, you could at least envision Michigan being really aggressive, doing all kinds of different things on defense. But because you could play a lot of man off the corners and not worry about it. Now you're saying, well, will this have to be more of a zone team? Now Don Brown has played obviously a lot of zone, but it's not his favorite thing. I don't think. I think he'd rather be a team that could cover in man and come after you with linebackers or safeties. So I don't know. I mean, again, we're in a place where we see a lot of parts that look really good on the defense, but you've got questions, and the questions are complementary spots, really. Defensive tackle and corner are in some sense very, very complementary. And so I just don't know. When you see, and I don't know if Seth mentioned this off air or on air, but when you see Alabama giving up 48 points, my guess is Alabama recruited some really good guys and some really good guys on the defensive line. And they give up 48 points to a Rich Rod offense. And so, what's going to happen to Michigan is, I guess, a fair question. Now, Seth believes a lot of that might be synergy and the disability to actually practice together as an entire team due to coronavirus, which is something I hadn't thought about, but I think is a really good suggestion, that it's going to be more difficult than we've seen this in college in particular, but you're seeing in the NFL too, this sort of progression on the offensive side of the ball. Offenses seem way ahead of defenses. And, you saw it, of course, in the Midlands, and now maybe it's even moving to the SEC, that offenses are dominating. I don't know, but it feels like a different day of college football. That's for sure. I have a question up on screen. Is Dax moving to cornerback from a Scott Park?
Yeah.
And
so 2 questions. Is Dax moving to cornerback, and would they like for Dax to move to cornerback?
Yeah.
Those are two key questions, right?
Yeah. Sam, maybe you can inform us more, but my understanding of that situation is, one, they asked Dax to try it, and then Dax is kind of like, what am I doing here? I'm a safety. I'm trying to build a portfolio for the NFL at safety. And, this is not the 1970s anymore, where you can just like throw whoever you want, wherever you want, right? These guys are here for a purpose, and part of that purpose is to move on with their lives after Michigan. And I understand that from Dax's perspective, but that's the sense that I got, that like maybe he probably would make a good cornerback, but he probably makes a better safety, and he probably knows it. When they flipped him with Sammy Faustin, that one scares me, because it's not like, okay, let's see if Dax can do this so we can cross-train him anymore. Now it's, we need more options at cornerback, and it's very clear that they're basically looking for anything at this point.
So I think that, where there's a disconnect is in the perception of what Dax would be at corner. For those who have watched him from high school and certainly here at Michigan, there is no discernible difference in the ceiling that he has at the two positions. They feel that he could be every bit the corner prospect that he is a safety prospect. If Ohio State recruited him as a corner, you come here, you're the next Jeff Okudah, was kind of the approach. So they wanted him to be that. One of the things that Nick Saban said, understanding that he wants to be a safety, they said Mika Fitzpatrick, who played some corner at Bama, but they kept him at safety. Michigan's stance is, and I think it was a real tell from Don Brown in the press conference. There are hidden nuggets in these things that you need to pay closer attention to. And when he said Dax Hill is the best cover guy in the Big Ten, what safety have you ever heard a coach say that about? He's the best cover guy out there. You just don't say that. So why then is he a safety? That's totally personal preference. Most guys who can play corner, who have the talent, the ability to be a top flight corner, play corner. But you got to understand how this dude is wired. He is a hitter. I said on the site, he is a Ronnie Lott mentality for you old schoolers. He just happens to be blessed with great cover skills. And so, yeah, you've hit it, Seth. They did ask him a few times, for a few weeks. Hey, man, this is Jalen Ramsey, who was a safety and a corner at Florida State, and he goes to the league. He's the number one corner in the league, and he just signed a contract for $105 million, the richest contract ever for a DB. Marlon Humphrey, who's Ira's guy with the Baltimore Ravens, signs a $98 million contract. The top corners get paid more than the top safeties. It is a higher value position, and so they appealed to that. And even that was not a convincing argument for a guy whose mentality is, I want to be in the mix. I want to be in the middle of the action. I want to be in the middle of the field. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to move him around. He's still going to play the nickel. But I think ideally, if they had their druthers, his base position would be corner and then move around from there. It's not like you would put him on the outside and leave him there. He would still be a nickel. I think he would still get snaps at safety. They would move him around the defense. Just maybe the highest percentage of snaps would come at corner, because if it's you guys be the coach. You're playing Rashad Bateman, and Rashad Bateman is going all Penn State on you. You guys watched that game last year?
Mm-hmm.
Rashad Bateman destroyed Penn State. I think he had to have like 200 yards receiving. And you mean to tell me you got the best cover guy in the league on your team, and you don't want him on that guy? I think that was the thought process. If we got this guy and we think he's the best cover guy, we wanted to put him on the best receiver. Now, they still may do that in the pinch, and Dax is a team guy. So if they're out there and he's doing his Plaxico Burress impression, right, then I think Dax would slide out there to help out. I think they got that break the glass in case of emergency thing on there, but he's going to be a safety this year. And to your point, Seth, I do think that it's telling that they want to bolster the competition at that position, though, by sliding Sammy Faustin over there.
Yeah. And I know that they like Faustin a lot, and that's a good sign for Faustin. because he's a guy who's a lot of talent, and he came in raw, right? He was a guy that we thought wouldn't play for 3 years anyway. So the fact that he's coming through right now, that's good news. And it's also good news for Jamon Green, because he was another guy that was kind of getting lost in the shuffle there, and now they're using his name out there. But if they're using his name and they're talking about Jalen Perry and they're talking about Eamon Dennis, as soon as they start throwing these names out there, you're like, they got nobody, and they're not, and they're not talking about Turner. And DJ Turner is the guy who was he had the best story, right? That guy was hurt last year. He was a speedster. They recruited him way more than other programs did because they thought they had something in him. And if he's not playing or he's not seizing that job, it's that's not happening either,
I think it's Jamon Green and DJ finding the most consistent guy of those two, and then seeing how Sammy Faustin fits in that mix. Jamon Green is, as far as talent is concerned, of that group, when you talk about throwing his size in there too, because he's a really long guy, I think ideally, he's the guy that they're pointing to. But there's a competition there that he hasn't won just yet. So let the best man win. But it'd be, like I said, they got to break the glass in case of emergency there. In case, and
that's fine. I mean, it's better than David Terrell, which is where our answer was to Plaxico.
right. Hey, so Brian, if you get a chance to look at this, we missed you, man. What happened? Anyway, if people ask what MIA, he'll be here next week. Brian Cook, we're gonna find him, even if we got to go over there and put the camera on him ourselves. We will find Brian and get him on.
He and I both have a lot of dad responsibilities right now, and we've it's hard to get both of us on at the same time.
Right, I got you. Well, guys, this is going to be a fun format, so get prepared, because next week we go full bore into opponent preview, matchup talk, Michigan, Minnesota. So, Seth, I know you do a great job with the breakdowns. Be ready to get into next week, my man.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, Craig Ross.
Thank you. I enjoyed this very much, and feels good. I'm glad the roundtable's back.
We are making a Craig Ross fan Twitter page, by the way, just so you know. It's coming. People want to engage more with Craig Ross. Yeah. That will do it for today's show. Thanks to the MGoBlog crew. Thanks to, obviously, my partner, Mr. Ira Weintraub. We'll be back tomorrow here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, The Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports Ann Arbor, a Cumulus station.